All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. My name is Matt Fisher. I'm a solution architect with ServiceNow focused on our security and risk practice within the DoD and IC. Today, I'm joined by Jorge Garcia, our principal product manager, and we're going to talk about a new paradigm for automating RMF. Now, before we really get into it, I do need to show you the safe harbor statement. We're going to show and discuss some things that aren't quite released yet, so it's important to understand that this presentation does not obligate us in any way. With that said, let's start talking RMF. In NIST's own words, RMF is a holistic and comprehensive process that spans the system development lifecycle and provides processes and tasks for all 6 stages, plus the prepare stage. If you look at RMF, it is absolutely this. It's a very complex but very comprehensive framework that really addresses a ton of concerns. It does indeed span the system development lifecycle from before a machine is even stood up into its operation with continuous monitoring, and there's certainly plenty of work to do. The challenge with RMF exists in automating it. Understanding the framework, understanding the practices isn't tough, but applying them at scale requires significant automation. And this is where customers tell us they're struggling with their legacy approaches. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that I am the furthest thing from an RMF expert. What little knowledge I have comes from talking with our customers, from the engineering layers, the development layers, all the way to the executive layers, from talking with our partners. And what I hear consistently is that they're using these niche products that were created 10 or 15 years ago that filled a very important niche at the time, but haven't evolved and don't provide the capabilities they need now. We hear that they're effectively data islands of their own. And some of these have very closed proprietary architectures that make it hard to integrate. They're very focused on controls, very rigid around that. What it means is that it takes a long time, it's difficult, it's expensive to integrate these things, and that you aren't getting the automation you really need out of it. That there's too much manual effort occurring. In fact, one customer told me that 80% of their RMF work occurs outside of the platform. That's the vast majority of work being done manually without any automation behind it. That their business processes have to mold to the software because the software is too rigid. That they can't integrate these things into the rest of the agency the way they want. They aren't getting the visibility they want. And from a business perspective, this means it's an extremely long path to value from these systems with high sustainment costs. Just overall, it's not working for them. So we feel that customers deserve a better way of doing things. But this requires a new paradigm. You have to stop thinking about RMF as just controls and start thinking about it as work, right? What you need, what you deserve is work automation, not just control mappings, not just that very technical aspect of AC3 against the system. You need to be able to accommodate more of the overall work inside your system. And the system needs to be very configurable, very flexible. It has to be easy to design workflows and make this thing work the way you need it to do. But for this to work at the same time, it needs to be able to join IT, operations, security, compliance, all these different groups across the enterprise into a single set of congruent processes without gaps, without barriers, without having to resort to email and spreadsheets. It needs to be enabled with real-time ground truth. If you can do this, you'll get a faster time to value, you'll get lower sustainment, but most importantly, you'll get reduced risk. You'll get faster authorization times, right, without increasing the amount of work required for it. Now, this is what ServiceNow does. We make workflow. We excel at automating work processes across the enterprise, processes all across IT, but also outside of IT. And we deliver it in a consumer-like experience, meaning we strive to make the software you use at work look and feel and operate more like the software you're used to at home. So we enable our platform with capabilities out of the box. And this platform is, first and foremost, at its core, a low-code platform built for configurability. This platform is built of tons of little building blocks of automation. Automations like workflows and task boards and notifications and approvals and knowledge bases. And we bring these building blocks together to build applications that deliver value out of the box. We have applications in IT service management that helps you manage your change releases, your instance, your problems, but also operations management, which includes things like discovering what's on the network, how these assets relate to each other, how these services are mapped out, right? Asset management, security operations, which helps you respond to security incidents faster, helps you respond to your vulnerabilities and manage your actual vulnerability response, your configuration compliance. And all of this comes together with our risk management, where we help you build and apply policies and controls and measure their compliance, where we leverage all the data in the platform to give you real-time views of your risk. We let you easily audit these things. Our integrated risk management provides a huge foundational platform of automation for RMF, from managing these policies and breaking them down into controls and applying these controls to things, to doing automated attestations, continuous monitoring indicators, and the entire life cycle. When an indicator fails, creating issues, driving remediation tasks from it. And this has done very well for us in the marketplace. Right now, our integrated risk management product leads 3 different Gartner Magic Quadrants. It leads the Forrester Wave and has other industry accolades. And this is really a result of that ServiceNow platform approach combined with a steady increase investment in our space. We invest heavily. Every year we invest more and more in this integrated risk management. And today we're going to talk about our latest investment, continuous authorization and monitoring. This is the newest ServiceNow application. It's the first ServiceNow application built specifically for the federal government to help you do RMF. And it brings those integrated risk management capabilities as well as platform capabilities together and applies it directly to RMF for you. So with no further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jorge, who's going to discuss how we leverage the ServiceNow approach in building this application. And I'll do a short demonstration for you.
Thank you, Matt. So as Matt said, right, we are releasing this new application, Continuous Authorization and Monitoring, CAM, on the 15th of October. And we'll walk through some of the capabilities as to why ServiceNow, what makes us different, what makes us, or highlight some of our differentiators. And then we'll go straight into a demo where I'll quickly walk you through some of the highlights of the application. So the first thing that we have as an advantage is that when we defined the boundary, right, and we're scoping all of the different system elements that are going to be part of that boundary, we have the ability to leverage some of the existing data that is part already of your CMDB. And so using IT operations management, we have visibility and discovery and service mapping to bring those assets into our purview, bring some of the relationships that exist, right? So if we understand a business service is supported by different assets, then we also understand the criticality against it. And so we leverage all of the data that exists in IT operations management to give us that visibility, right? Because understanding the assets that we own and understanding how they relate to one another is extremely important when we're defining the authorization boundary. Along IT operations management, we have IT asset management that allows us to do further inventory and further categorization of both our software and our hardware through the software asset management offering and the hardware asset management offering. And finally, RMF is meant to be deeply embedded within the software development lifecycle. And so when we have the ability to tie ourselves together to a DevOps program, we can start leveraging and implementing these controls while the application is being built, while the application is being onboarded, so that it is easier at that point to do it rather than when it has come online. The second thing that we'll do is we'll perform risk assessments, right? And for that, we'll use risk and policy management. And as Matt alluded to earlier, this is the foundational element of our continuous and authorization management tool. And we'll go through in the different slides as to why that is, right? But the first thing is, with risk management, with business continuity management, we have capabilities to do risk assessments, whether it's a privacy impact assessment, whether it's a BIA, a business impact assessment, whether it's inherent versus residual risk assessments, whatever type of assessment or risk assessment you need to do, we have those capabilities not just to do the risk assessment, but to apply mitigating controls and then get a real-time visibility of your risk posture based on indicators and based on automation. So that's the first major pillar of why we are built on top of risk management. The second one is around control baselines and information types, as well as control inheritance. So with the policy and compliance capabilities, with the audit management capabilities, with some of these use case accelerators that we're rolling out against ISO 27001 and the CIS Top 20 controls, we have capabilities to enhance our control baselines, ability to add control overlays, the ability to look at information types and be able to do a risk assessment against those information types so that we are, yes, going by what NIST says on 860 version 2, but we are also understanding the true impact of those information types. And then through policy and compliance, we also have the concept of control inheritance, being able to inherit both the security that a control provides, but also the compliance status that the control provides. And then the last piece is around the POEMs, right? So we have internal audit capabilities so that we enable your security control assessors to go into the system, have a workbench, have the ability to create work papers, be able to delegate some of these tasks, be able to create tasks around interviews, around walkthroughs, around control tests, and automate some of that process so that when you create some of those POEMs, all of that is available to them. Alongside with POEMs comes our security operations offering. And so if there are security incidents that may impact some of these controls, and typically POEMs are associated to vulnerabilities. And so because we have all of that data, we mapped it to all of those software and assets that we mapped in the system elements. We'll give you full visibility and we'll surface all of that great data. And I'll show you that when I go into the demo so that your POEMs can now come from the vulnerabilities that are coming from our vulnerability response offering. And finally, when we get into the incident piece that may impact availability, we can also create some of these incidents. And so what we provide you is with a risk summary based on all of the data that we're seeing, based on all of the information that is tied to those assets that we scoped out. We will give you a risk summary that will help your authorizing officials make an authorizing decision and then help you continuously monitor and understand the risk posture real time, not a snapshot in time on a risk assessment that was done a year ago, but real time based on what is happening in your environment against all of those things. What I'm showing you is some of the information that is coming from the left-hand side of the ServiceNow portfolio, but we do have an expanding and growing portfolio as part of the ServiceNow like family of applications. And so we'll continue to enhance, we'll continue to invest, and we'll continue to look at opportunities of how we can leverage some of these additional data and additional value coming from some of these other applications. With the time I have left, I will walk you through a very short demo. So I'm going to flip to this environment. First thing that I'll show you is I'm logged in as an ISO. And I'm in this package, I'm already in the authorize phase, but in the prepare phase, I have the ability to define those system elements. So let's look at what that looks like based on information that is coming from the CMDB. First thing that I see is I see all of my system elements. Are the actual Windows servers that are part of our IT operations management, part of hardware asset management, part of software asset management, and all of these have relationships in it. All of these have context that if I was to click on them would give me a better understanding of the scope of this particular authorization package. By tying this individual CIs or configuration items, that is how we then are able to map vulnerabilities, security incidents that actually affect these assets. But that's the first step. I have the ability to map those system elements. I have the ability to attach diagrams, and I have the ability to add stakeholders. As part of the prepare step, I also can add additional stakeholders that are related to the package. So if I have a team of ISOs that are going to help the system owner through this particular process, I can define those. You can add additional personas to this. So if there is an ISI, an information system security engineer, that provides additional support to your ISMs and ISOs, we can add that field to this form so that you can start tracking that type of data. The part of the prepare and a little bit of the categorize step is here I'm showing you a privacy threshold analysis and a privacy impact assessment. In this case, because I responded yes to these questions, I now have to perform a PIA and then the capability to see that. So part of the prepare step is about identifying, and scoping out your boundary, defining some of your strategies, performing risk assessments, but also the ability to create control overlays, the ability to modify your information type library, the ability to go into each of those controls and specify how you're going to monitor those controls, how you're going to test those controls. And that is all included as part of our IRM portfolio, which comes included as part of this CAM application. As we move to categorize, we have that information type library. In this case, only one was added, but I can add more than one. And we also tell you, based on 860, what NIST has designated to be the CINA of this information type. We use FIPS 199 to calculate the worst case or the high watermark or the worst case scenario. And we also give you capabilities to override some of those impacts. Part of your categorization may also include selecting a control overlay, but that may also be done in the select step. And when we go into the select step, we automatically populate the baseline of controls based on the impact. This comes from NIST. We give you abilities to add additional controls, one, through those control overlays, two, manually, the ability to specify certain controls to be not applicable, and then specify certain controls to either be common controls, which means others have the ability to inherit them, or the ability to inherit controls. As I go up into the steps, we got into the implement step. We automatically create all of the controls. And then we give you a very comprehensive life cycle for each control, alongside comprehensive tools for you to automate the assessment process of each control. We give you the ability to create control indicators so that you can actually go out and automatically deem the compliance status of a control. Once you've walked through the implement step, we'll go into the assessment phase. I'll open this record and I'll talk a little bit to it. So this is part of our internal audit capabilities. Because this audit or this particular assessment has already been performed, I see it all grayed out. But we give you capabilities to have a workbench. We have additional capabilities coming out alongside CAM that will allow you to manage your team more effectively, will allow you to create reports a little bit more effectively, and just additional capabilities to track the status of each of these individual tasks. We see here the controls that we need to scope out, and here we see the audit tasks that we need to perform. We have the ability to create control tests. We have the ability to create interviews. We have the ability to create walkthroughs. And based on each of these audit tasks, I can have automation to give me the procedures of how the control is going to be tested. And I can create indicators so that they can go ahead and test this control. But during the assessment process is where the SCA would determine the control to be effective or ineffective. And based on that, for every control that we deem to be ineffective, we would generate a poem. And a poem can either be remediated, which would give you the ability to enter a series of milestones so that you can track when those milestones are actually performed versus what was planned. Or you have the ability to accept one of these poems, which gives us the ability to create acceptance task. Enter the why we're accepting it, the justification around it, and then the actual weakness. Once we get into the past the assess step, we'll get into the authorize. And this is where we start seeing additional value coming in from these other ServiceNow offerings. We see all of the change requests that are open against those Windows servers that we saw earlier. We see all of the security incidents that are impacting all of those system elements from my authorization boundary. I see a risk score and a priority against these. And I see all of the vulnerabilities that are open. I see a risk score and a risk rating that are open again against those Windows servers that are part or scope of this particular authorization boundary. We provide all of the information here in this risk summary, showing you the average risk scores, showing you how many open items we found. And this is where we plan to enhance these capabilities further so you can create rules and thresholds to automate the poem creation, which, by the way, can be done through indicators, but we are going to make that process more intuitive and easier. We give you the capability to generate an SSP, and we attach it automatically here. And so you have the ability to format that report and generate it based on the step here. And in this particular package, I would send it for that final authorization. So the AO would log in here. They would see all of the evidence that we're showing here. They would see how each control was implemented, how it may have deviated from the actual plan, all of the poems, all of the particular work that was done in the assessment process. And they would then give that green light so for this package to be authorized, and then we move into the monitor phase. This list here that you see, the security incidents, these vulnerable items, these are real-time lists. So that if today I authorize, but tomorrow I all of a sudden have 1,000 new vulnerabilities, I would see that here, and I would see it in the risk summary. And this is where you gain that real-time visibility, not necessarily what occurred a year ago, but also because we're not working with diagrams or pictures, because we're working with the ServiceNow platform, the CMDB, all of these other products, this is the level of visibility and insight that we can gain. So with that, Matt, I will pass it off to you just to give some closing remarks.
Yeah, outstanding. Thank you, Jorge. Let me go ahead and share one last time. So hopefully that was helpful to you. And again, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this recording with us. Since this isn't a live event and we don't have virtual folks standing by, I decided to just share my email address. If you'd like to learn more about this or have questions or comments or suggestions, please reach out. Make sure you use a real attention-getting subject line, and I'll respond back and get you in touch with the right folks within ServiceNow. So thank you all again, Jorge. Thank you, sir, and have a great evening.